Yes, welcome to the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy, once again hosting someone who excels in business communication so that you and I can learn tips and strategies that will benefit our business. Today, it's a wonderful privilege to host Cincinnati-based Jane Garee. I've known her for more than a dozen years. I've admired, as many people have, her tremendous ability to help people boost their sales. And so some background about Jane. With over 20 years of sales production and sales team management experience, Jane is an award-winning salesperson known for breaking revenue records and providing leadership and training to individuals and sales teams so that they do the same. Prior to becoming a prominent sales consultant, Jane was a top producer and sales manager, quickly working her way up the ranks as a new professional with two different billion-dollar companies. She generated $1.2 million in revenue in her first 12 months. Get that. First 12 months as a branch manager with a Fortune 500 staffing company, and was later recruited to open the South Florida area for one of Inc. 500's fastest growing companies, where her office achieved #1 status in sales results. So join me now, please, as I welcome Jane Garee. Hello, Jane.
Hi, Bill. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
It's a privilege and a pleasure to host you on the Biz Communication Show. Jane, one of the topics that you have become well known for is helping us understand how the sales scene and the sales process have changed so that what once worked before doesn't work now. And anybody who has their antenna up and working knows how much our world has changed. We don't get our movies from Blockbuster on Friday night. We don't go to the mall shopping on weekends. I don't wear a suit and tie to church. There are hundreds of changes. And so naturally, it's going to impact how we relate with people and how we have what you call sales conversations. So moving quickly then to your expertise on this topic, tell us one major change in sales that destroys a myth about how we should be doing it.
Absolutely. And so what I want to say before that is just to really preface what I believe about sales, which is that selling is a noble profession. I really believe that selling and the transaction and the relationship that's developed through a sales conversation, it changes the world. And how does it change the world? One person at a time, one conversation at a time. So the old adage and notion of what a salesperson is, the whole sleazy, slimy, hey, not today and not for everybody, and all the things that we've kind of learned over the years, it has given sales a very bad reputation. That has always saddened me because to me, that's really not the essence of what a sales conversation is.
Well,
now,
what would be the way to do it then?
Yes, and that would bring me to the first myth, which is the reason why most people tend to think that selling is this awful thing that you have to do or that you do to people, is because this is myth number one, you always have to be closing.
So if let's say that you're my sales manager and I'm a sales rep, and I come back into the office in the old days, I've had a sales appointment and you would say to me, did you close the deal? And I would say, well, no, and you'd say, why not? You're supposed to. Isn't that the way it used to happen?
Yes, and we want to be really clear in that if we're defining close the deal as generating revenue for your business and or your company, that has to happen. Businesses have to make money, they have to generate revenue. However, what used to be was you went out and you closed the deal at all costs. You did whatever you needed to do, you said whatever you needed to say, and you closed the deal. And there was sort of this viewpoint that people are paychecks. And we don't want to do that. You never really want to do that. And it never should have been okay to do that. But as we move further into this, it's almost like a new age of enlightenment. You cannot do that. People are not paychecks. So please don't treat them that way. Rather than closing and closing at all costs with the things that we've heard over the years, always be closing, coffee's for closer. This is this really hardcore, no matter what you do, seal the deal kind of mentality. And it's really bad. It's bad for business. It creates a lot of pressure on the salesperson. It creates a lot of pressure on the prospective client. So there is a revision to the myth of always be closing.
Well, what's the contemporary approach that works?
The contemporary approach that works and has always worked is, as I like to term it, always be opening. So instead of always be closing, it's always be opening. And here's why. When you open a space where somebody can really speak their truth, and you open an opportunity to have an honest exchange or a dialogue, you're really opening up the opportunity for somebody to self-diagnose and share with you as the business owner or salesperson what's going on with them, what is working, what is not, what do they fear, what do they love, what are they running away from, what are they running towards. And when you open that, it creates a different dynamic, a different exchange, and you really don't have to worry about the close, because ultimately the client will end up enrolling themselves in what it is that you see with them.
I believe the most important word you mentioned in that brief explanation is the word dialogue, because in traditional sales approaches, it was pretty much a monologue. The
Yes.
sales rep went in, they said, here's what we've got. Here's how it's going to benefit you. Sign here.
Right.
And there was no analysis of what the person's needs really were. And I remember so well, Jane, to admit my own faults on this, which we all have had it at one time or another. I remember when I became a communication consultant 22 years ago, one of the first big appointments I had, and I was very fortunate to get it. I remember so well walking in. This was very naive. I walked in and I handed the prospect a piece of paper and I said, here's what I think you need.
Yeah.
And without being rude, they said, we've already got somebody who's doing that for us. What else do you have? And I was very fortunate that they didn't just show me the exit initially, because how do I know without having a conversation with them what they need? And discovering the need it's a vital, indispensable first step, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head when you talked about this concept of the salesperson. I know what you need. This is what you should do. I know better. And I was in a training yesterday and we were doing some role playing, and she's just wanting to increase her enrollments or her conversion rate. I don't love using that term because, again, people aren't paychecks, but conversion is important, just meaning we're moving somebody through the process, so they're investing in themselves through you. But she was really wanting to amp that up. And so we were doing some role playing, and she did a good job of asking me questions so that she had an understanding of where I was. I was playing the prospective client. But then she said, oh, okay, here's the problem. And she started telling me, and I felt like I was in a lecture. And if you do this, then, and the reason why, and and did you know? And I said, wait, time out, stop. You lost me, because I just hear you preaching from the podium and I don't have an emotional connection with you. It just sounds like you're bossing me. You're telling me what to do. You know what's best for me. And she said, well, but I know what you need. And I said, you do know what I need. And you ask good questions, but I don't know what I need because you haven't asked those questions. And that's really critical in a sales conversation, when you allow somebody to self-diagnose. And that is your job in the sales conversation, is to navigate the conversation so they get to their truth. When you do that, then you don't have to come in and boss them and preach and lecture and then say, ready to sign, which credit card do you want to use? Those are those hard closing techniques and tactics. They don't work.
I'm thinking as you're talking that we need to change as salespeople. We need to change from being the oracle who knows it all,
Right.
to being the inquisitor.
Yes.
And we, as you say, the lecture, uh, the doctor with a solution,
Right.
and particularly with the clientele that we're dealing with these days. It's a much different mindset than it might have been a couple of decades ago, because the matter of free will and free choice and not being coerced is just practically universal with anybody we'd be dealing with, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. People want to be free. They want to be free to do what they want to do and speak their mind and choose their truth and all of that. And that shows up in a sales conversation. So you can say, this is what you're going to do, and this is why I think you should. And you're always the expert in authority. So I don't want people to think that's not happening. Of course, you're the expert in authority, and you will be called upon to give your expert advice and thoughts and insight on what it is that they need. It's far more effective, though, if you lead them on a process where they are starting to get that realization on their own. So I always say it like this: when somebody says, "I don't know if I should do this." So if I were to say to you, "Gosh, I don't know, Bill. It sounds like a good idea, but I'm not really sure." For you to come back and say, "Well, it is, Jane, and this is why you should, and this is why it's important, and this is what you need." You're just kind of setting up an argument, because people are naturally inclined to defend what it is that they believe. And so you've just set us up for this conflict, as opposed to you saying, well, that's maybe it isn't. I understand it's a big decision. Tell me a little bit more about what you're thinking at this moment. Now you're making it okay for me to have my thoughts, for me to have my beliefs, for me to have my fears, because you're not challenging them right then in the moment. You are curious as to why I think and believe the way that I do. And that's how you really move a conversation forward.
That's a great explanation. And something else I know that you say along with this about always be closing is a myth. Another myth is everybody gets an offer.
Yeah.
Oh, what's
Yes.
wrong with that?
No, there's a whole lot wrong with that. Not everybody is going to be a prospective client. Some people you're gonna love as people. You'd go have coffee with them. You think they're great. You'd sit on the porch and drink lemonade. They're great people, but they really aren't a good fit for your business. They don't have a problem you can solve, or you just get a feeling they might be a great person, not so much a great client. So those people are, I call them good people, bad fit. On the flip side, you have bad people who are a good fit. And I don't mean they're inherently bad. There's nothing wrong with them. But a bad person is, you get to define what their criteria is. So something for me is people don't show up. They don't do the work that I'm requiring them to do. They're in victim mode. Those are not great characteristic traits for me to feel like I'm going to help somebody achieve the success and results that they want. So that person, not a great person, but they clearly have a problem that I can solve, and I could solve it really well. So bad person, good fit. You don't want to work with either of those options. You only want to work with the good people who are good fits. And again, good are traits that you need in your professional life. And there are some personal characteristic traits that are probably important to you. When that happens and they have a problem that you can solve, they're a good person who's a good fit. Those are the people that you want to make an offer to see if they would like to go into partnership with you and work with you. And by partnership, I don't mean business partners. I mean relationally, you're going to move in. When you do that, then your business is going to be stronger. You're going to have better referrals. You're going to have better results with and for your clients. And that makes for a much better business.
I think something that we need to underscore here is what you've mentioned throughout. And that is, it's not so much our statements that are going to move a sale forward. It's our questions. Am I right on that?
100%. Yes. I say this all the time. I teach this to my clients all the time. Ask a deep level, thought-provoking question and let the power of that question stand on its own. The quality of the answers are always determined upon the quality of the questions. And when you train yourself to ask these deep, thought-provoking questions, no prompting, no telling them what they should think, too many words. I say that all the time. Too many words. Just ask the question and stop talking. it's amazing what actually starts to happen. People will tell you their truth. And this I cannot say enough, because to me, this is really the essence of not just a sales conversation, but this is how we get along as humans on the planet, sharing an experience on the globe together, is when somebody tells their truth, they hear it. And when they hear it, they feel it. And when they feel the truth, they own it. And it is in the moment of the ownership of the truth that anybody makes a decision to do something. Sometimes a decision is, I'm not going to do anything. But without that linear thought process where your emotions are actually coming into play, this is what I believe, and I deeply believe it, and here is why. And so the job of the business owner, the salesperson, is to be curious about that, to understand it, and give that person the space and the freedom to process what their truth is without judgment, without coming in to boss them, without coming in to tell them why they are wrong. That's what moves conversations forward. And when conversations move forward, people can move forward together in relationship.
My guess is that as a highly successful, revered sales professional, that one of the major obstacles that you run into, and you've just alluded to that, is dealing with salespeople who are uncomfortable with silence.
Yeah.
They want conversation. We talk about the value. This should be a conversation, yes, but conversations can have breathers. They can have pauses, and especially when you ask a key provocative question, fold your arms, take a sip of coffee, be quiet. And that must be something that it's difficult for you to train some people to do, because we're such gabby salespeople.
It is a learned skill. I am a high extrovert. I have a lot of energy. I never run out of words. And my go-tos on my desk is I always have a glass of water, and I have a nail file. And I just kind of, start picking at my nails and filing them a little bit if I'm waiting and I'm in that space for somebody to say something. It is hard to stop talking, but if you don't do that, you never really get to hear what the other person thinks and believes and values. And without that information, it's going to be difficult to encourage somebody to take the steps and or direction that they need to get what they want out of life, to be who they want to be.
We've got about another minute for a question. And here's my thought. It would seem to me that in your training, you also have to convince salespeople that their prospects, yes, they need to know the salesperson's qualification, but it's not the features, it's not the qualification, it's the results that come from working with that person. And that's a shift many people have to come to under your direction. Yes, you can talk about why you're credentialed to do this, but they're going to talk to a lot of people who are credentialed. But what's in it for me? That's a big question, isn't it?
Right. Yes, you have to. So the third myth is actually, I have to be really good at explaining what I do. You don't. Nobody really cares what you do insofar as what you do, why you do it, and how you do it. That's not what people care about. What they do care about is what will working with you do for them. Or I kind of say in sort of cheeky, I grew up in the 80s language, awesome, or in the 80s, so the language awesome. People don't care about why you're awesome. They care about why you are going to make them awesome. That's really what people are looking for. So when you talk about, this is my process and this is how I do it, and this is why I got into it, and this is why you want to work with me, none of that really matters to them. A little bit, but what's more important in the moment in that conversation is, hey, Bill, this is what's going to happen for you as a result of our working together. You are going to, you will. That's what you want to know. So people are paying you for what is going to happen for them, not because you have all the things that you need to be credentialed to do the job.
As a communication professional, I have made many mistakes, as anyone does. And you're reminding me of one of my major early mistakes. I worked up my first, what we called a one sheet for professional speakers. You know what we're talking about there.
Yeah.
I took it to a friend who was a veteran speaker at the time. And so I was expecting him to say, gosh, this looks great. And you've got a lot to offer and so on. He read over it and he said, all good stuff, Bill, but I don't think people are going to care about this. I said, what? Why? He said, they want to know what's the result of hiring you. They don't want to know what's happened before that, but they want to know that primarily. Good note to end on, isn't it, Jane?
Absolutely. And this has been so fun.
Well, it's fun, it's informative, and I like the fact that you mentioned fun, because in all of your literature about what you do professionally, you say you work with people and you have fun and they have fun doing it. Jane, I know that there are people who have listened to the podcast or who have watched the YouTube video interview, and they will want to get in touch with you to learn more about your services. So please give us your contact information.
Absolutely. And I would love that, because this really is all about serving more people, making more money, and having more fun. And fun is a huge part of my brand. So I love getting emails from people. I have the most amazing community. They send me emails all the time. So you can do that, Jane at showstoppingsales.com, Jane, Jane, at showstoppingsales.com. You can also go to my website, which is showstoppingsales.com. There is a freebie there for you. You also get into my community, and you'll get a weekly sales training tip, and those are super popular. So showstoppingsales.com, you can get signed up right there, or you can email me, Jane at showstoppingsales.com, and find me on Facebook, Jane Garee.
I went to your website and signed up for that weekly Wednesday sales tip myself.
Yeah, those are so popular. I've been doing those for 10 years and people just love them.
I'm sure I will benefit as well. Thank you for that contact information. I know that our viewers and listeners will want to get in touch with you. And since you shared your contact information, I'll share mine. Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy. So logically, my website is B-I-Z, bizcommunicationguy.com. I invite you to go there. Check my services for corporations and leaders. Give me a phone call and let's discuss your communication problems and challenges and how I can assist you with them. Jane, 20-second closing comment from you, please.
Oh, wow. Sales is a noble profession. The work that you do is probably what you're called to do. So be proud of what you do. And just remember, sales is a noble profession. It changes the world one person at a time, one conversation at a time, and your people need you. So go out there and do what you do.
Well said. Thank you, Jane, for being with us today. Thanks to those of you who joined us on the Biz Communication Show. Be with us next week when I host another superlative guest that we can all benefit from hearing. I'm Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy.